Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of dragon thrones, silk scrolls, and streets echoing with the clatter of wooden sandals. It's Imperial China, a realm that conjures visions of graceful calligraphy and elegant porcelain. But for you, it's less kung fu movie, more survival horror. Forget kung pao chicken and relaxing guzheng music. This place is a boot camp for the soul. You'll barely make it through the morning. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up with a start. No alarm clock, just the grating cry of a rooster and the sharp sting of cold air slapping your cheeks. You're curled up on a straw mat so thin it makes cardboard look plush, inside a wattle and daub hut that smells faintly of mildew and something unidentifiable, maybe old turnips. Your breath clouds in the dawn light, because there's no insulation, no windows, and definitely no heating. You've got exactly 3 possessions: a ceramic bowl, a rough hemp tunic, and the vague hope your landlord forgets it's tax day. Your first task is to wash up. That means a wooden ladle of well water so frigid it might as well be glacier runoff. No soap. Just grit your teeth, splash and scrub with your fingers. Hygiene isn't optional. You're sharing this house with your extended family and a lively colony of lice. And you'd better keep those armpits decent, because bathhouses are a luxury for the rich or religious. And today's wash basin is as good as it gets. Scholars debate whether communal bathhouses existed widely outside monasteries, but in your village, bathing is aspirational. Breakfast? Hope you like thin rice gruel. It's yesterday's water-soaked leftovers, reheated over a flickering fire fed with dung patties. Maybe there's a preserved egg to go with itif. You're lucky. That egg might have been buried in ash and clay for weeks. It smells like a haunted swamp, but it's food. Sort of. You chew slowly while dodging a mosquito that shouldn't exist in this cold, and contemplate whether the bits floating in your gruel are seasoning or just protein. Historians still argue whether early rural diets in the Song dynasty included bugs by choice or accident. In your case, it's both. Your mother hands you a bamboo rake with a look that says, "I bore you. Now go suffer." Time to work. No school, no weekend cartoons. You march toward the rice paddies, stepping around clumps of frozen mud and trying not to trip on the gnarled roots poking through the path. The smell of pig manure wafts in from a neighbour's pen, mingling with smoke and a hint of fried scallions from a richer family's breakfast. You try not to envy them. They probably have 2 bowls. In the fields, you and 20 other peasants are already late. The overseer, perched smugly on a horse, cracks a whip in the air. Not at you, exactly, but close enough. You bow reflexively. Status here is everything, and you're at the bottom of a very tall ladder. The soil beneath your feet is frozen near the top, and soggy below, perfect for growing rice, terrible for keeping your socks dry. Not that you have socks. You spend the next 6 hours bent over, stabbing at weeds, fixing irrigation ditches, or planting seedlings if it's that time of year. Your back starts to ache before the sun clears the horizon. You hear the faint tune of a travelling merchant's flute somewhere down the road. It's cheerful, and it makes you irrationally angry. You're halfway through the day, and already one callus deeper into peasanthood. Lunch break is 15 minutes and another bowl of gruel. No chopsticks, just slurp. You're technically allowed more rest, but the overseer's mood is sour today. Someone probably gave him weak tea. You get back to work before he finds a reason to beat you, which, to be honest, he doesn't need. Discipline here is informal. And the law? Well, it's not really written for people like you. Midday heat bakes your scalp, even in spring. Imperial China isn't all bamboo forests and mountain vista sits. Also swamplands and sun-scorched valleys, depending on the dynasty and region. You happen to be born in a fertile zone where mosquitoes rule and the sun peels skin like fruit. You use a scrap of cloth to shade your neck. Sunscreen doesn't exist, unless you count smearing mud or duck fat across your cheeks. Spoiler, it doesn't work. Historians still debate whether the sunscreen recipes of ancient Chinese medicine were real treatments or folklore handed down through desperation. Either way, your face is already red. Evening drags in slowly. You think of sneaking off early, just for a nap, just for a break, but then you remember Lin, the last guy who tried. They say he's still limping after the last lashing, so you stay. Your hands blister. Your mouth is dry. You dream of rainwater in a clean gourd. That'll never happen. At sundown, the overseer finally lets you go. Your legs are trembling, your fingers numb. You trudge back home past ox carts, past shouting gamblers outside a tea house, past a Confucian scroll pasted onto a crumbling village wall. It reads something about duty. You roll your eyes. Back at home, dinner is guess what gruel again. There's a sliver of salted fish this time. It smells like despair but tastes like victory. You sit cross-legged beside your siblings and pass the bowl. Everyone gets a bite. If you're lucky, someone tells a ghost story before bed. You almost laugh, but your ribs ache when you breathe. You lie back on your straw mat, staring at the cracked beams above. A spider drifts lazily across the ceiling. You think about the emperor, a man you'll never meet, who wears silk robes and drinks jasmine tea. Meanwhile, your pillow is a sack of millet. Sleep comes fast, mostly because you're exhausted, partly because tomorrow will be exactly the same, except colder, or wetter, or maybe it's tax day. You don't want to know. You wake up with a dull ache in your jaw. No surprise your teeth have been bothering you for weeks now. That one in the back, the molar with a tiny black crater, has officially declared mutiny. You probe it with your tongue, wince, and genuinely wish you lived in a time with dentists. But you don't. You're in Imperial China, and your options are limited to a smooth twig, crushed salt, and sheer optimism. Dental hygiene, as you now understand all too personally, is more of a spiritual discipline than a medical one. Each morning, you chew on a yaji, a thin willow twig you fray with your teeth until the fibers split like a tiny brush. You scrub your teeth with it, dipping the tip in salt or ashes if you can find some. If you're lucky, there's mint leaf. If you're unlucky, it's just salt from the fish brine barrel, and it burns. Historians argue whether ancient Chinese dental care was effective or just ritualized guesswork. On one hand, archaeological remains show surprisingly decent teeth for the time. On the other, there's also plenty of evidence of early tooth loss, jawbone infections, and makeshift dentistry that involved a lot of yanking and not much healing. The truth? You're not waiting to find out. That throbbing molar has to go. Grandmother Liu is your village's doctor. She's 82, blind in one eye, and deeply confident that pain is the body's way of releasing evil winds. She takes one look at your swollen face, taps your pulse, and announces, "It's your qi misbehaving." You nod, because disagreeing means getting cupped, leeched, or worse, set on fire with moxa sticks. Today's prescription: garlic paste for the gum, tied on with silk thread, and a whispered curse to drive out the tooth demon. The next morning, your face is worse. It's puffed out like a melon. Grandmother Liu shakes her head and motions for the apprentice. Your cousin Ming, age 92, fetch the iron tongs. You try to protest, but it's no use. The ritual must be completed. A worn cloth is shoved into your mouth, and you clutch the sides of the stool like it's about to lift off. One yank later, you're screaming into your own palms, and the pain is so blinding, you momentarily believe your ancestors are welcoming you into the next life. Ming proudly holds up the bloody molar like a trophy. It still has bits of your gum clinging to it. No painkillers, no antiseptics, just ginger tea, and the gentle reassurance that pain is cleansing. You try to believe it, but that night you lie awake, trembling, mouth throbbing, sweat cooling on your skin as the local temple bell tolls softly in the distance. That bell, by the way, was forged with donations from 3 entire families, mostly in rice. They say hearing its ring purifies the soul. You hope it works on infections too. Of course, bad teeth aren't your only hygiene issue. You're lucky if you bathe once a month. That means constant body odor, itchy armpits, and hair like an overused horsebrush. You've tried to keep yourself clean truly, but between hauling manure and sleeping in the same sweat-soaked clothes, your efforts are undone before lunch. Bathing traditions vary by region. In the north, especially in winter, people skip full-body bathing entirely and rely on dry cleaning, brushing dust, and sweat off with rough cloth. In the south, where humidity turns your linen undergarments into mush, bathing riverside is common, though modesty rules mean wrapping in a robe while scrubbing with reed soap and rice husk paste. You, unfortunately, live in a place with no river and no privacy. So you do what others do. You use a damp rag, scrub behind your ears, and light incense sticks to mask the smell. Sometimes you burn dried orange peels for fragrance. Sometimes you just give up and try not to notice. Everyone stinks. It's democratic. As for your hair, it must be tied up. Always. Loose hair suggests madness or mourning. You twist yours into a knot and secure it with a bone pin you inherited from an uncle who died mysteriously. No one asks why the pin has 3 notches carved into it. You don't either. Every now and then, the village organizes a cleansing day. It's less about hygiene and more about community guilt. The temple priest declares that filth invites demons, and suddenly everyone's scrubbing their doorsteps and boiling vinegar to purify their homes. You're handed a bucket and told to wash the pig. You do it because the last person who refused got mysteriously sick 2 weeks later and has never been quite right since. Superstition. Sure, but powerful. You're not supposed to cut your nails at night. That invites ghosts. You're not supposed to point at the moon. That offends the moon goddess and gives you swollen lips. And never ever step over a sleeping dog. It can steal your soul. These rules may sound absurd, but when every day is a struggle, you cling to whatever might protect you. And if your toothache comes back, well, there's always acupuncture, or praying to the god of longevity, while standing on one leg and burning chicken feathers. Modern you might be laughing, but hungry, aching, lice-bitten you isn't amused. And even if you do survive the pain and avoid an infection, there's the matter of appearance. Rotten teeth are shameful. They mark you as poor, careless, or ungrateful to your ancestors. You smile less. You talk with your hand over your mouth. You start to dream of a world where toothbrushes have bristles and dentists use anesthesia. Unfortunately, that world is about 1,000 years away. By the time you recover from your extraction, the world has moved on. The village has shifted to planting sweet potatoes. You missed 2 days in the field and lost your spot near the shade. You're back on the outer edge, next to the ox pen. The smell is familiar. Your tooth still hurts, and tomorrow is hair-washing day with vinegar, no less. You sigh, chew ginger root to ease the ache, and tell yourself you're still alive. Barely. You wake to the crunch of something moving beneath your mat. Not a rat this time, just a beetle. Probably. You flick it away, sit up, and realize your stomach is already groaning, as if your body knows what's coming. Breakfast, or what passes for it. You shuffle across the cold floorboards, fingers numbed by morning chill, and find your grandmother ladling greyish gruel into ceramic bowls that clink like they're ashamed to be used so often. The base is always rice, but never enough of it. It's stretched with boiling water, sometimes thickened with millet or barley, if the granary hasn't been raided by mold or officials. Floating inside, if you're fortunate, a sliver of salted vegetable. If not, today's addition is protein-rich unintended, wriggling protein. You stare down at a small beetle doing the backstroke, fish it out with your chopsticks, and flick it into the fire. It sizzles. Your brother shrugs and slurps his gruel without hesitation. You do the same. Hunger is a powerful motivator. Meals here are built around scarcity. The imperial records might talk about banquets with duck tongue and crab roe, but you're not at the emperor's table. You're a peasant in the hinterlands, eating to survive, not to enjoy. Most of your calories come from grain rice in the south, wheat or millet in the north. Meat, rare and festive. If a pig is butchered, you get scraps, tail, hooves, skin boiled into jelly. You once saw someone eat a boiled chicken head and suck the eyeballs like grapes. You haven't forgotten that sound. Historians still debate whether the infamous century egg, those blackened, preserved delicacies, were a delicacy for elites or a preservation necessity for the rural poor. Either way, you've tasted one, and you still have nightmares. Buried in ash, salt and lime for weeks, the yolk turns greenish-grey, the white like amber jelly. The smell is assertive. But in winter, with nothing else, you eat it like treasure. Sometimes you get tofu if the bean press isn't broken, and rats haven't gotten to the stored soybeans. It's pale, soft, and doesn't taste like much unless drowned in vinegar or brine. There are no spices here, no sauces, just salt, when it can be bartered or begged. You once saw a travelling spice merchant with a cart of cinnamon, star anise, and dried chili. He smelled like legend. You couldn't afford even a sniff. Vegetables come from your own patch, and they're as unpredictable as the weather. Pickled radish, wilted cabbage, wild greens that taste like dirt and regret. On rare occasions, you find mushrooms in the woods, but for every edible fungus, there's a cousin that might melt your liver. You test by nibbling and waiting. If you don't hallucinate within an hour, dinner is served. There's a reason your dreams are about banquets. Long tables groaning with roast pork, glistening fish, and bowls of rice heaped high. In real life, your portions are rationed with the precision of a monk on a diet. Your grandmother once told you she attended a feast at a county magistrate's home, 30 dishes in one night. Duck tongue, lotus roots soaked in honey, wine poured from a dragon-shaped decanter. She said the chopsticks were jade. You asked what jade tasted like. She didn't laugh. Food security here is a balancing act on a rice stalk. Too much rain, your fields flood and rot. Too little, drought turns your paddies to cracked clay. One bandit raid, one tax hike, one bout of locust sand, boom, your pantry's empty. That's why your family keeps jars of pickled eggs buried beneath the floorboards. That's why you once watched your father trade an embroidered robe your great-grandfather's for a sack of barley. Even during good times, what you eat depends entirely on season and fortune. Spring, greens, sprouts, tender shoots if the frost hasn't killed them. Summer, a brief window of abundance, fresh cucumbers, water chestnuts, maybe fish if the river's clear. Autumn, harvest feasts if the yield's high, desperation if it's low. Winter, dried everything. You drink hot water and pretend it's broth. And yes, you've eaten insects. Grasshoppers are decent when roasted. Silkworm pupae are squishy but tolerable. Cicadas? Crunchy, though they taste like tree bark wearing armor. You don't seek them out. But when your stomach sounds like a distant war drum, and the pantry is just a ceramic echo chamber, you stop being picky. You once heard of a delicacy called dragon beard candy. Spun sugar pulled into fine threads, stuffed with peanuts and sesame. You wouldn't even recognize sugar if it punched you in the teeth. Sweetness is rare when it comes. It's from honey, fruit, or fermented rice wine dribbled on special dishes during New Year festivals. You remember one time, at the temple fair, someone handed you a hawthorn fruit skewer dipped in syrup. You licked it slowly. That was 3 years ago. You still remember the way the sticky sweetness clung to your lips. Drinks? Water, if it's been boiled. Tea, if someone's feeling generous. It's mostly weak green leaf boiled in clay pots. No sugar, no milk, no ceremony. Just heat and liquid. If the adults are drinking anything stronger, it's rice wine in chipped cups that smell like vinegar and burnt wood. You're not allowed to try it. You did anyway. Once. You didn't sleep for 2 days. You also couldn't stop hiccuping, which your uncle claimed meant a ghost had entered your chest. He smacked you with a sandal. The hiccups went away. You never drank again. And yet, you're still alive. Still chewing. Still pretending the third bowl of rice water is refreshing. You glance at the fire pit, where a pot bubbles with something thick and brown. Soup, maybe. Or what's left of last week's broth with a new root tossed in. You won't know until you taste it. You're used to mystery meals. You've trained your stomach to behave. One last thought before bed. You pass a merchant's stall on your way home. He's roasting something over a tiny brazier. It smells divine, crispy, savoury, buttery. You peer closer. It's a skewered sparrow. 2 copper coins. You only have 1. You walk away, head down, belly grumbling. That night, you dream you're at a banquet again, only this time. No one wakes you before the first bite. You wake up scratching. Again. At this point, it's more muscle memory than reaction. Your fingers glide up under your collarbone, down your ribs, behind your knee, always chasing the latest ambush from the army of lice, fleas, or mites that's taken permanent residence in your clothing. You know they're there. You've seen them. Tiny, skittering, smug, and there's no real solution. Your clothes are, let's call them, minimalist, made from rough hemp cloth that rubs like sandpaper and smells vaguely like damp rope. There's a tunic that was probably off-white once, now somewhere between beige and despair. Your trousers are held up with a fraying cord. And underwear? Not really a thing, unless you count the second layer of itchy fabric that doubles as winter insulation. They're stiff when dry, heavier when wet, and always an invitation to chafing, rashes, or worse. And the worst part? You can't afford more. You own exactly 2 outfits. One for work, one for formal occasions, meaning taxes, funerals, or festivals where you need to look less dead than usual. You wash them by hand in river water or a communal bucket, beating them against rocks and hanging them to dry on bamboo poles. It works well enough unless it rains. Then they just grow mold. Historians still argue how often people changed clothes in pre-modern China. Some records suggest seasonal changes literally, 2 outfits a year. Others mention special attire for ceremonies or rituals, implying more variety. But for you, when the seasons shift, you just layer. You stuff straw in your sleeves and tie rope around your calves to trap warmth. If you're lucky, a neighbor gifts you a patch of sheepskin to tuck against your back. You call it your cloak of honor. It smells like wet barn and occasionally sheds. Shoes? You wear straw sandals in dry weather, clumsy wooden clogs when it rains. They chafe your heels and let in mud, but that's better than frostbite. In winter, you line them with scrap fabric and hope. One toe already turned purple last year. It never quite went back to normal, and you're always afraid of lice. They live in your seams, nest in your bedding, and turn sleep into a scratchy nightmare. You've tried remedies, brushing with horsetail plants, rubbing vinegar into your scalp, even laying your clothes in the sun with a prayer to the household god. Nothing works for long. Once, your cousin boiled her tunic and wore it damp just to drown the bugs. She caught a chest cold and couldn't work for a week. The overseer wasn't sympathetic. There's also the ever-present threat of skin infections. The rice paddies are breeding grounds for every type of rash known to man. Athlete's foot, ringworm, boils things you didn't even know could grow on skin. Your legs are perpetually scabbed. And because you can't scratch openly, it's considered dirty. You perfect the art of accidental rubbing against doors, against tree trunks, against your own knees under the dinner table. You're not alone. Everyone smells. Everyone itches. The only exception is the village scribe, who somehow always smells like plum blossoms and ink. His robes are made of silk, actual silk. You once touched the edge of one when he wasn't looking. It felt like water trapped in fabric. You haven't forgotten. Silk, of course, is for the elite. Not just nobles, but scholars, officials, merchants wealthy enough to own land. And silk isn't just about comfort, it's status. It means you don't work the fields. It means your back is clean and your fingernails aren't cracked. It means you don't eat gruel 3 times a day, or wonder if your sock has grown a new hole since dawn. You fantasize about silk the way other people dream of immortality. Still, your clothes serve their purpose. Barely. They protect you from sunburn, bug bites, and the rare brush with thorns or splinters. You tie your sleeves back when working, and let them hang long when visiting the shrine. Clothes are more than fabric, they're signals. Loose robes suggest mourning or illness. Bright colours imply celebration. Black is for funerals. Red is for weddings or New Year. And blue, your faded tunic, just means you're another forgettable peasant, trying not to sweat too hard before noon. When your shirt finally tears beyond repair, you patch it, badly, with whatever scrap you can find. Sometimes dyed cotton from a travelling trader, sometimes bark cloth if you're really desperate. Your tunic becomes a mosaic of stains, threads, and stitched memories. There's the rip from falling in the irrigation ditch, the burn mark from tipping the soup pot, the mud smear from helping bury Uncle Way. Your clothes tell your story, and that story is itchy. Fringe fact: in some regions, peasants believed rubbing garlic on the armpits helped repel fleas. You tried it. All it did was make you smell like a dumpling filling gone rogue. Still, you keep doing it, because the garlic grows wild near your fields, and you'd rather be pungent than perforated by flea bites. Your siblings call you Spicy Brother now. The real kicker? Formal inspections. Twice a year, imperial tax agents or census officials arrive to survey the village. Everyone is expected to look presentable, which means laundering your best outfit, combing your hair with carved bone, and pretending your sleeves haven't been chewed by rodents. The irony? Those officials don't care. They just note your family head count, estimate your rice yield, and leave with your last jar of pickled radish. You wave goodbye in your patched robe, then go inside to re-sew the hem. But every now and then, someone returns from the city. A cousin who went to the capital as a servant, a soldier on leave. They describe robes so long they drag on the floor, shoes so narrow they look like crescent moons, jewelry, perfume, hairpins shaped like phoenixes. You listen, half in awe, half in disbelief, but deep down, you know it's true. There's a world out there where clothing is beauty. Here, it's armor. And tonight, as you peel off your damp tunic and hang it near the fire, you sigh. You'll scratch yourself to sleep again. You'll wake up with the same outfit. You'll keep wearing it until it falls apart completely. Then you'll patch it again. Because in Imperial China, fashion isn't fast, it's survival. You're jolted awake not by sunlight or a rooster, but by the sharp crack of bamboo on flesh. Not yours yet. It's your neighbor again, Lao Chin, getting corrected for slipping while carrying a water bucket. You wince, roll off your mat, and immediately feel yesterday's pain flooding back into your shoulders, your spine, your thighs, muscles stiff from bending, hands blistered from gripping tools made for someone else's profit. You rub your wrists and brace yourself. Another day of labor, another tightrope walk between obedience and collapse. Breakfast is silent. Everyone's conserving energy. Your grandmother passes you a small ball of sticky rice wrapped in a wilted leaf. You're lucky. You pocket it for later and slurp down your bowl of hot water with one hand, the other already tying your work sash. Today's assignment? Dredging the irrigation channels. Again, you try not to sigh aloud. Work here isn't just hard, it's endless. Farming isn't romantic rows of golden grain. It's kneeling in sludge, pulling weeds that cling like curses, and replanting rice seedlings while swatting away dragonflies and your own dizziness. The paddies stretch beyond the mist, a green ocean with no shore. The soil sucks at your ankles. Your shirt clings to your back. The sun hasn't even risen fully, and your hair is already slick with sweat. Everyone labours under the eye of the bailiff, a squat man with a scar down his jaw and a stick always within reach. He doesn't yell much, just gestures, and his gestures mean trouble. You once saw him beat a boy your age for slouching. 5 lashes. The boy didn't cry, just stared at the ground with an empty look that scared you more than the blood. There are no weekends, no half days, no sick leave. If you can walk, you work. If you can't, you crawl to the side and hope you're not forgotten. You once sprained your ankle falling off a slippery embankment. You kept harvesting, limping from one row to the next until the pain made your vision blur. No one offered to help. Everyone's afraid to fall behind. Historians still debate whether the average peasant in Tang or Ming China worked more or less than modern people. Records show intense agricultural seasons, followed by slow winters, but in reality, there's always something to do. Fixing tools, mending roofs, repairing carts, feeding animals, cleaning the latrines. Even the children carry water, pick weeds and haul kindling. There's no idle time unless you're dead. Quirky fact? There's a village tradition here. If you finish a row of planting before sunset, you're allowed to hum a tune during the last stretch. A small rebellion. You hum quietly an old lullaby your mother sang and no one stops you. You wonder if the bailiff hears it and spares you on purpose. Or maybe he's just tired too. Lunch is the rice ball you saved. Cold, sticky, and perfect. You savor it under a shade tree with 10 other workers, all too tired to talk. Someone passes around a salted plum. You suck it slowly, eyes closed, pretending it's candy. For 10 minutes, you're not a peasant. You're a ghost, floating in the taste. Then the bell rings, and you're summoned back to the living. In the afternoon, you're sent to help in the kiln. It's worse than the fields. You shovel clay, stoke fire, and carry bricks so hot they leave imprints on your palms. The master shouts directions you barely understand. He smells like smoke and sour wine. You keep your head down and your hands busy. If you break a brick, you owe 2 days of labor. You broke one last month. You're still working it off. The heat becomes unbearable. You remove your outer robe, tie it around your waist, and keep going. Your vision swims. Someone throws water on your neck. It feels like mercy. You whisper, "Thanks." The kiln roars. The fire hisses. And for a moment you swear it's breathing. You step back, heart pounding, and then return to the rhythm shovel. Carry, stack, again and again and again. By evening you can barely stand. Your legs tremble. Your hands are raw. You pass Lao Chin on the road he's limping to, favouring his side where the stick found him. You nod. He nods back. No words. Just recognition. A silent agreement. We're still here. Back at home, your little sister is boiling water for foot soaks. A rare luxury. She's crushed mint leaves into the pot. The steam rises like a spell. You sit, feet plunged into the heat, and nearly weep. For 5 minutes you feel human again. Dinner is boiled turnip and some leftover mung beans. You chew slowly, grateful. Your mother rubs your shoulders in silence. She knows the pain. She's lived it longer. Her fingers are hard as stone, her touch soft as dusk. You lean into it, letting yourself collapse just a little. Before bed, you massage your knees with sesame oil. You whisper the work chant under your breath, an old rhyme passed down by the elders. The plough moves, the earth wakes. The sweat falls, the gods watch. It doesn't help, but it grounds you. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Because in Imperial China, labor isn't just a way of life, it's the price of survival. No mercy, no shortcuts. Just the rhythm of hands and earth, fire and ash, pain and endurance. And you're still standing. Barely. You're up before dawn again, woken not by the rooster this time, but by the eerie stillness of the air. Something's off. You peek through the slats in your wall and see fog pressing against the trees like a blanket of damp cotton. The sky is heavy with grey. Your joints ache, but it's not the usual soreness, it's a warning. The older villagers feel it too. The women whisper by the well. The river's swollen. The gods are angry. Tie down the grain stores. Weather in Imperial China doesn't care about your plans, your prayers, or your back-breaking efforts. It operates with all the predictability of a sleeping tiger, quiet 1 minute, chaos the next. And when the sky decides to throw a tantrum, you're not just caught in the middle, you're crushed. This morning the rain starts slow, just a drizzle, but you can feel it in your bones. It's going to turn ugly. You rush to the fields anyway, because if you don't show up, you don't eat. Your straw sandals soak through in minutes. Your clothes cling to you like wet paper. And the fields? They've turned into a swamp. Planting in this muck is a nightmare. Every step sinks. Every movement slurps. You try to keep your footing, but the clay grips you like a trap, and your arms have to strain twice as hard to move even a single shoot. The overseer stands beneath a scrap of oilcloth, dry as arrogance, barking orders like the sky isn't collapsing. You envy his umbrella more than his authority. Historians still argue whether ancient Chinese irrigation systems were more advanced than their Roman counterparts. True, the dikes, canals, and sluices were marvels of ingenuity, especially during the Han and Song dynasties. But when the river decides to break free, it breaks everything. And right now, you're watching a canal wall crumble like it's made of pastry. Water gushes into the rice paddy like a dragon let loose. Your neighbors scream. You drop your basket and run. The rest of the day is spent in chaos. You and half the village try to stack sandbags, prop bamboo poles, and scoop water with anything that will hold it. It's pointless. The rain keeps falling. The ground turns into quicksand. One of the cows gets stuck and panics, bellowing until someone cuts its harness to let it drown in peace. You retch and keep working. There's no time to grieve. When you finally stumble home, soaked to the marrow and shaking with exhaustion, you find the roof leaking. Your father's already on a ladder, stuffing rags into holes and muttering curses at the sky. Your mother's trying to boil rice over a fire that won't catch. Your sister is bailing water from the storeroom. You help, because what else can you do? You scoop, pour, wipe, repeat. And then, in the middle of this chaos shale, ice chunks, some as big as apricot stones, clatter onto the thatch, thudding like angry fists. You all duck under blankets and pray. One hits the ox square in the skull. It goes down. You don't know if it's dead or just stunned. Either way, it won't be ploughing tomorrow. Weather here isn't just inconvenient, it's deadly. Summer brings unbearable heat that bakes the land and warps the bamboo fences. You felt the sun scald your skin through layers of cloth, watched your sweat evaporate before it hits the ground. Shade is rare, trees are few. You've envied dogs for being able to pant. Then winter arrives, and suddenly you wish for the sun again. Your house has no insulation. The wind slips through every crack. Your blankets are thin. You sleep curled like a shrimp beside the fire pit, which smoulders with damp twigs and cow dung patties. You can't afford wood. Sometimes your brother gathers pine needles just to have something that burns. One night last winter, a neighbor's baby froze in her sleep. They found her stiff and silent, her lips blue. They say her spirit still lingers. You try not to think about it as you huddle under a blanket that smells like mildew and hope. And don't forget the droughts, months with no rain, cracked earth, failed crops, cattle dropping like flies. You chew boiled tree bark just to trick your stomach. Your aunt once ground dried lotus leaves into powder and mixed it with water to make a paste. She called it survival porridge. You called it sand. But the worst is the flooding. It doesn't just ruin crops. It spreads disease. Dysentery, cholera, fevers with names no one understands. The water turns green, then black, and then disappears, leaving behind nothing but rot. You've had friends disappear into sinkholes, whole fields swallowed in minutes. You watch your hard work float away, and still go out the next day to plant again. And always, always there's someone saying, "It's fate." The priest tells you the gods are angry. The elder says it's the Dragon King's wrath. Someone burns incense. Someone else sacrifices a chicken, and life stumbles on. There's no government aid, no rescue teams. If the Emperor's court even hears of your village's suffering, it'll be months later, and through 3 layers of indifferent bureaucracy. Maybe someone will send a bag of rice. Maybe not. You learn not to wait. And yet, despite all this, the land is your lifeline. When the sun behaves and the rains come gentle, rice grows tall and fat. Sweet potatoes multiply like blessings. You remember one summer, when the plum trees overflowed and the air smelled like sugar. You picked fruit until your arms were sore. That year, everyone smiled a little more. It was the last good harvest before the locusts. Now, you sit beside the dying fire, damp from the waist down, wrapped in every dry scrap you can find. Your fingers are white and puckered. You have a cough that won't leave. Outside, the rain has stopped. For now, you close your eyes, and in the quiet drip of water from the ceiling, you imagine sun again. Not blistering sun, gentle sun, just warm enough to dry the mud, to light the morning without burning it. You'll rise tomorrow. Your feet will find their way back to the paddy. The land will still need you, and you'll go. Because in Imperial China, the weather doesn't wait, and neither does survival. You drag your feet through the wet dust of the main road. Squinting at the red paper, notices plastered to the shrine gate. Another tax announcement. You don't even have to read it to know it's bad news. Taxes in Imperial China aren't a once-a-year event. They're a constant shadow, trailing your every harvest, every breath, every bowl of rice you dare to fill. And the worst part? You don't even know where your your rice is going. The imperial tax system is famously complex. It varies not only by dynasty but also by province, occupation, and sheer whim of the local magistrate. There's land tax, grain tax, labor tax, cloth tax, salt tax, market tax, and temple tax. Some of these are seasonal, others just appear. You once paid a fee because the local official's nephew was getting married. The fee was called celebration grain. It didn't feel very celebratory. Your family keeps careful count of what's due: 4 bushels of unhusked rice, 2 rolls of hemp cloth, and 3 days of public labor this quarter. You already paid the hemp. The rice is being held back from your harvest, stacked in that grim, rat-chewed warehouse beside the village hall. But the labor? That's now. You've been volunteered to help pave the road to the magistrate's villa, which of course he'll ride over in a palanquin. You spend 3 days under the sun lifting rocks, shoveling gravel, and getting yelled at by guards who do nothing but sip tea and occasionally poke you with a bamboo stick to encourage diligence. Your only reward? A cold millet bun and a scowl. You head home sore, sunburned, and a little angrier than usual. Historians still debate whether local corruption was more widespread under the Ming or Qing dynasties. Some claim the examination system curbed abuses by installing scholars with Confucian ethics. Others argue that bribery was so routine it may as well have been its own tax. Either way, for you, the officials are indistinguishable from bandits, except bandits at least have the decency to wear masks. Speaking of bandits, there's been talk lately of raiders in the next valley. A group of displaced soldiers, they say men who once guarded the frontier, and now use their training to rob merchant caravans and extort grain from poor villages. The constable claims it's under control. You don't believe him. He couldn't control a sneeze. So you sleep with a hoe beside your bed and listen to the night for footsteps. And there are footsteps, sometimes. Rustling, murmuring, distant laughter where there shouldn't be any. You've heard of villages burned in the night. You've seen the firelight on the hills. You've helped dig hiding pits for jars of rice, in case they come. But more often, the threat isn't from outside. It's from inside. Bribes, lies, petty theft. Your cousin married the magistrate's daughter's servant, and suddenly his taxes dropped by half. You know a man who forged tax slips, burned them, and claimed he'd already paid. They found out. His punishment involved a very large log and a very public spectacle. The message was clear. Even going to market is a gamble. Every stall has its own fee. Selling sweet potatoes? Pay the booth rental. Bringing in dried fish? That's a smell tax. One merchant told you he paid a bribe just to park his cart beneath a shady tree. You believed him. The tree had a plaque on it, for the use of honest traders, which, you suspect, means traders who pay the gatekeeper's cousin. One of your few joys is listening to the travelling storytellers in the market square. They spin tales of bold outlaws who defy corrupt officialsmen, like Song Jiang or Wu Song, from water margin, who steal from the rich and feed the poor. You cheer inside. But then you remember, those stories end in blood. The empire always wins. The outlaws always fall. And you're not even an outlaw just tired. Quirky fact, some villages pay their taxes not in rice or cloth, but in frogs. That's right. Certain temple districts offer frog skins to local officials, believing them to have medicinal or symbolic value. You once saw a tax official receive a sack full of dried frogs. He frowned, muttered about amphibian inflation, and accepted it anyway. You fantasize about running away, living as a bandit, or maybe joining a monastery. No taxes, no officials, just quiet chanting and simple meals. But monasteries don't take in kids with weak legs and bad teeth. And banditry? You can't even swing a proper sword. So you stay, you bow, you pay, you endure. One afternoon, as you pass the village shrine, you see an old man tearing down the tax notice. The gods won't read it, he says flatly. No need to clutter their house. He tosses the paper into the dirt and walks off. No one stops him. And then there's the temple tax, yes. Even piety has a price. You're supposed to donate oil, candles, rice, or coins during festivals. The priest always says it's for balance, for karma, for harmony. But his robes are silk, and yours are still patched. You light incense and pretend you're not bitter. At night, you hear your parents whispering. They're short on cloth. The winter levy is due. If they miss it, the bailiff might confiscate the ox or worse. Press your older brother into forced labor. You offer your second tunic. It's too small anyway. Your mother pretends not to cry as she folds it. The next day, a tax agent arrives on horseback. His boots shine. His smile is thin. He accepts your bundle, nods once, and rides off. Just like that, a piece of your family is gone. And the road to the magistrate's house? It gleams. You walk it sometimes, slowly, imagining what it might feel like to ride instead of trudge. But for now, it's just another path you're expected to maintain, with your back, with your sweat, with the little you have left. You're crouched beside a brazier that barely glows, pressing your hands toward it for a lick of warmth while your cousin groans beside you. He's got a fever. Again. Face red as a lacquer bowl, sweat pouring like summer rain. Your grandmother mutters a prayer and reaches for her basket of cures. You close your eyes and brace yourself, because in Imperial China, medicine walks a crooked path between wisdom, guesswork, and pure desperation. First, she ties onion peels behind his ears. Then she burns a twist of mugwort and waves it like an incense stick over his chest. Finally, she boils a soup made of dried lizards, chrysanthemum petals, and a pinch of powdered deer horn. He gags at the smell. You do too. But this is how it's always been done, and sometimes it even works. Traditional medicine here is deep-rooted, sophisticated, and unpredictable. It's based on balancing yin and yang, harmonizing the 5 elements, and ensuring the body's qi flows like a calm river. But those theories don't always line up with reality, especially when your cousin's face is ballooning and he hasn't eaten in 2 days. You hope the gods are paying attention. Your village doesn't have a real doctor. You have Lucy, a toothless herbalist who learned her trade from her mother and swears by hot peppers for lung ailments and turtle shell for liver spots. She once treated a boy's dislocated shoulder by spitting on it and tying it with silk thread soaked in rice wine. He still can't lift his arm above his head. There's a travelling physician who comes by every few months. He wears a robe embroidered with cranes and carries a lacquered chest full of herbs, powders, and ominous metal tools. He charges a fortune, though. Last time, he diagnosed your uncle with cold spleen wind and prescribed 10 doses of bear bile tea. You sold half your sweet potato crop to pay for it, Your uncle still limps. Historians still argue whether ancient Chinese remedies were effective or mostly ritualistic. Some, like acupuncture and herbal tonics, have persisted through the centuries and even found their way into modern clinics. Others, like drinking tiger urine for virility or crushing dried toads for back pain, have not. You once tried golden cicada powder for your persistent cough. It made you vomit for 3 days. Your cough stayed. The cicada, presumably, did not. Quirky fact: there's a legend in your village that placing a dried gecko on your tongue while standing on one leg can cure jealousy. You tried it once, just to see what it felt like. You were still jealous, and it tasted like dust and regret. But healing here isn't just physical, it's spiritual. Sickness is often seen as a punishment from ancestors or demons. When your baby brother had a fever, your parents tied a red thread around his wrist and placed coins beneath his pillow to bribe the ghost to leave. When that failed, they summoned the shaman. She danced, shouted, and burned hair in a bowl. The fever broke the next day. Coincidence? You're not sure, but no one dared question it. When you're sick, you can't stop working. No one covers your chores. You limp, sneeze, groan and still bend to pull weeds. If you collapse, they drag you to the shade and pour warm water over your face. If you can't get up, they leave you for a bit and hope you come around. The term bed rest assumes you have a bed, and that anyone would let you rest. Death isn't rare. Not here. Not for people like you. You've seen infants buried under plum trees, elders wrapped in straw mats and carried to hillside graves. You've helped dig shallow pits for fever victims when the earth was too frozen for proper burials. And always, there's ceremony. Paper money is burned. Rice is scattered. Incense coils until your throat stings. Even if the body is gone, the spirit lingers. You wonder what ghosts think of all this, of the treatments, the chants, the endless bitter teas. Do they laugh? Do they approve? Do they hover over your fevered cousin and whisper, "Drink more toad powder"? You try to study, not for fame, not for the civil service exam, those are distant dreams, but just to understand. You sneak peeks at the physician's scrolls when he's napping, diagrams of meridians, poems about liver heat and spleen dampness. It's fascinating and bewildering. You once memorized a chant about inviting calm wind to settle the gallbladder. You still don't know what it means, but knowledge doesn't buy medicine, so you rely on what's available. Ginger for nausea, plum vinegar for cuts, and ginseng when you can afford it. Usually never. Most often, it's boiled roots, onion poultices, and hope. You've heard of rich households using snow lotus, deer antler, even powdered pearl. Your medicine chest is a bundle of weeds tied with string. Tonight, your cousin sleeps. His fever has dropped. You don't know if it was the gecko wine or just time. You watch his chest rise and fall, and feel a flicker of gratitude, maybe to the gods, maybe to the herbs, maybe just to luck. You pull your robe tighter, refill the brazier with coals, and sit beside him through the night. In the morning, he eats a few grains of rice and smiles at you. A weak smile, but real, and for a moment, you believe. In turtle shells, in chanting, in warmth, in survival. Because in Imperial China, healing isn't guaranteed, but when it comes, it feels like a miracle. You don't even make it past the rice paddy before you're stopped again by an official's assistant holding a bamboo tally stick and a squint that says he's already decided you're guilty of something. He doesn't greet you, just waves a lazy hand and says, "You there, where are your family's tax tokens?" You blink. The tokens were handed in last week. You say so. He squints harder, like he's trying to see through your face. This is how it works in Imperial China. You're guilty until you can prove otherwise, and sometimes not even then. You reach into your sash and offer your work permit, just a stamped scrap of parchment, showing you're part of the land-holding peasants assigned to this district. He sniffs at it like it's got mold and waves you on. Just like that, you're allowed to go farm again. What a privilege. But don't relax. You're still fair game for everyone who outranks you, and that's basically everyone. Imperial society is built like a pagoda, narrow at the top, crushing at the bottom. The emperor might technically be the son of heaven, but you're the ant under his sandals. Even within the village, the hierarchy squeezes you like a bamboo press. Elders, scribes, landholders, they all get first dibs on everything, and you get what's left. There's a saying carved into a wooden plaque outside the village hall. Know your station, and the gods will favor you. You always thought it sounded more like a warning than a blessing. You've heard of people rising above their station, barefoot boys who became scribes, laborers who passed the civil service exam and joined the bureaucracy. But let's be honest, you're not one of them. The exam system requires years of study, access to books, tutors, scroll sand the free time to actually sit and learn. You've barely got time to patch your sandals. Historians still argue whether the imperial exam system was a true meritocracy or just a way to recycle elites. Sure, there were a few brilliant commoners who cracked the code, but for every scholar who rose from poverty, 100 more were ground down by the weight of daily survival. Your friend Bo has a scroll he hides in a clay jar under his floorboards. It's from his uncle, who once worked for a minor official in the next town. The scroll is covered in classical poetry and Confucian idioms. You read it by moonlight once, mouthing each word like it might open a door. It didn't, but it felt good to try. Then there's the matter of status symbols, those little markers of who's important and who's not. Robes with wide sleeves, headwear with jade pins, even umbrellas. Only the higher class is allowed to carry one without suspicion. You try it once, just a tattered parasol your mother stitched together from old rags. The constable rips it from your hand and calls you ambitious, as if shade is a crime. You can't ride a horse, can't wear silk, can't even use certain words when speaking to someone above you in rank. You once greeted a travelling magistrate with "peace to your house," instead of "blessings to your noble ancestors." That cost you a day in the stocks. Your back still remembers the sunburn. Even religion has its layers. The wealthy sponsor grand rituals, complete with lion dancers and drummers. You light incense and hope it doesn't rain before it burns down. You're allowed to worship, sure, but your gods are smaller, your offerings humbler, your voice quieter. You know your place. It's the dirt under someone else's sandal. Marriage? Don't even think about marrying up. Your cousin tried. Fell in love with the daughter of a mid-level grain clerk. She liked him, even passed him a handkerchief during Lantern Festival. When her father found out, he moved the family 2 towns over. Your cousin hasn't smiled since. You heard a joke once told quietly, after dark, when only fireflies could hear. What's the fastest way to rise in rank? Pause. Marry the emperor's horse. You laugh too loudly. Someone shushes you. In this world, even jokes have rules. And don't forget punishment. The law doesn't just apply to everyone equally. It applies harder to the lower rungs. If a noble steals a goat, he pays a fine. If you steal a radish, you might lose a finger. You once saw a thief, just a boy, maybe tented to a post and beaten for taking a melon from a merchant's cart. He screamed. No one intervened. The merchant nodded along with each strike. Quirky fact? There's an ancient ritual called touching the dragon's tail, where peasants in certain provinces would bow in the direction of the palace every new moon, just to remind themselves who ruled them. You've done it. You bowed. You whispered your name into the dirt. The dragon never answered. Still, there are rare moments when class lines blur. During the Ghost Festival, every honorich or poor lights lanterns and sets them afloat on the river. The flames dance together, side by side, as if they've forgotten whose hands lit them. For a moment, everyone becomes equal, just children of ancestors, just shadows, and hope. But the moment passes. The next morning, you're back to kneeling in front of the steward, hands outstretched, waiting for permission to work a field your family's ploughed for generations. And when he nods, barely looking at you, you bow so low your forehead touches the dust. Because in Imperial China, your place isn't where you stand, it's where you're allowed to kneel. The day begins with shouting, not the usual market squabbles or ox cart curses, but something more panicked, urgent tones. A child crying, someone pounding a gong in wild rhythm. You push open the door and see your neighbour's house draped in yellow paper strips. The old woman inside has passed. Again, not unusual, but this time, the family's wearing red sashes. That means it wasn't natural. That means they believe it was a ghost. In Imperial China, death is not the end of your problems. If anything, it's when they really start. You live in a world utterly shaped by the unseen gods, spirits, ghosts, and curses, all tangled in a web of rituals and taboos. Your every move, every word, every arrangement of bowls on a shrine has a ripple effect. Step wrong, and something might follow you home. You've grown up under these rules. Don't sweep the floor on New Year's Day, you'll sweep away good fortune. Don't cut your nails at night, ghosts. Love nail clippings. Don't hang your laundry too high, it insults the sky gods. Historians still argue whether these customs were born from religious doctrine or folk survival strategies. But here, they're not superstition, they're law. Today, your family makes offerings at the household altar. 3 incense sticks, a bowl of rice, a slice of dried pork. The idea is to honor your ancestors, keep them happy, fed, and quiet. Because an angry ancestor doesn't just make you sick or trip over rocks. They curse your harvest, make your ox miscarry, or cause your teeth to fall out. You once forgot to light incense for your grandfather. That week, your roof caved in. Coincidence? Maybe. You lit double the next week anyway. Religion in your village is a swirling mix of Buddhism, Taoism, and local law. You worship the Bodhisattva of compassion in the morning, tie a red thread for luck at the mountain shrine in the afternoon, and leave sesame oil at the foot of a banyan tree, just in case, by evening. There's no contradiction here, only coverage. Each house has a spirit tablet, a wooden plaque with names of deceased elders, usually housed on a shelf with offerings. Your great-grandfather's name is there, burned into the wood with reverence. You've never met him, but you bow to him every morning. Your mother says he once stopped a plague by appearing in someone's dream and demanding the village purify their water pots. Whether he saved lives or not, every home now boils their water. No one takes chances. You've also heard stories of fox spirit tricksters who take human form, seduce villagers, and cause chaos. You're told never to follow a beautiful stranger into the forest. You wouldn't dream of it anyway. Not since that night you saw eyes in the bamboo thicket, glowing yellow and unblinking. Quirky fact? Your uncle swears by ghost coins, coins with holes in the middle, strung together and blessed by a monk. He keeps them tied around his waist to block evil wind. You wear one too. It clinks when you walk. You feel safer with it, even if it sometimes digs into your hip bone. Every season brings new rituals. In spring, you burn paper money to ancestors. In summer, you hang gourds over doorways to ward off bad spirits. In autumn, you sweep the graves and leave mooncakes for the dead. And winter? Winter is for staying indoors after dark. Too many shadows. Too much risk. Tonight, there's a fortune teller visiting from the next village. He sets up a red canopy and lights a lantern shaped like a dragon's head. His teeth are black from chewing betel nut, and his eyes are cloudy, but his voice is strong. People line up with coins and questions. Will I marry? Will my crops survive? Will my ancestor forgive me for selling the family sword? You can't afford a reading, so you just hover near the edge, hoping to catch stray wisdom. Beware the west wind, he says suddenly. Not to anyone in particular. It carries voices from the river. You sleep poorly after that. Your village also hosts spirit parades during the ghost festival. Paper lanterns, drummers, masked dancers, meant to scare the dead back into their graves. You've danced in one. Your mask was a red demon with wide teeth. You tripped over a goat. Everyone laughed. But later, someone found the goat dead. No one said anything, but you left a dumpling on the shrine that night, just in case. There's a boy in your village who hears things. Says he sees shadows that whisper. The priest visits his house often. No one mocks him. No one gets too close. You wonder if he really hears ghosts, or if he's just broken in a way no herbal tea can fix. Your family once hosted a geomancer to check the feng shui of your house. He walked in circles, muttered about wind currents, and made your father move the stove to the other side of the wall. It's inconvenient, but your mother says the soup boils faster now. Harmony restored. The spirit world governs everything here. When a baby is born, you don't celebrate loudly. Noise attracts jealous ghosts. When someone dies, you mourn for 49 days, burning offerings and chanting prayers. Even weddings are carefully timed with lunar calendars to avoid clashes with inauspicious stars. You once heard of a couple who ignored the astrologer's advice. Their wedding tent collapsed. They now live in different provinces. You sometimes wonder what life would be like without all the rituals. Easier, maybe, but also emptier. The offerings, the incense, the whispered prayers. They're not just fear, they're love. A way to hold on to those who came before and protect those who are still here. Tonight, you place a bowl of rice on the altar, light the incense, and bow 3 times. The smoke curls upward, slow and steady. Somewhere, you hope, your ancestors see it, approve, smile, and if they don't, You'll just burn a few more joss papers tomorrow, just to be safe. You're standing in the crowd at the town square, pressed shoulder to shoulder with merchants, farmers, beggars, and silk-clad nobles. The palace caravan is passing through to envoys from the capital, guards in polished lamella armor, and servants with robes so clean they seem to float. Everyone hushes as the first palanquin appears. It's draped in red and gold, with tassels swaying in rhythm to the footfalls of 6 porters. Inside, no one dares to look too directly, just the silhouette of someone important, untouchable. You don't belong here, that's obvious, but you're curious. Like everyone else, you've heard stories about the inner court-gilded pavilions, jade hairpins, banquets with phoenix eggs and pippa music, so haunting it makes strong men weep. But behind those silk screens and golden gates, it's a world of power, fear, and ambition sharp enough to draw blood. Court life in Imperial China is the highest of high sand, the most dangerous of tightropes. You think your village overseer is cruel? Imagine living every day surrounded by people trained to lie, flatter, poison, and disappear you without leaving a trace. The emperor may be son of heaven, but he's also one slip away from a coup or a whisper in the dark that becomes an execution by dawn. Historians still debate whether the imperial court functioned as a stable bureaucracy or a nest of vipers wearing silk. The truth? It's both. The official annals praise virtuous ministers, righteous Confucian ideals, and benevolent rulings. But the unofficial accounts, those gossiped about in tea stalls and written in the margins of temple scrolls, tell of concubines, scheming, eunuchs manipulating, and rival factions playing chess with real lives. You've heard the name Wei Zhongxian, whispered in disgust, a powerful eunuch during the Ming dynasty who practically ruled the empire behind the curtain. They say he decided who lived or died with a raised eyebrow. Scholars who opposed him vanished. Their families followed. One day, he was honored with shrines. The next, he was declared a traitor, and his body desecrated. That's how fast fortunes flip at the top. Then there's the harem, hundreds of women, each hoping to bear the emperor's child, each locked in a gilded prison. You once saw a traveling performer act out the story of Lady Jen, favored by a prince, but later imprisoned in a dry well by his jealous wife. True or not, it haunted you. Beauty at court is dangerous. Silence is safer. You've also heard of palace food tasters, young men trained to sample every dish before the emperor lifts a chopstick. Most survive. Some don't. There's even a joke. If your food is delicious, praise the chef. If it's poisoned, blame the taster. You laughed nervously. Quirky fact? Imperial records describe an entire department devoted to managing palace time. Literally. One man's job was to strike a drum every 1,080 heartbeats, while another lit incense that burned with perfect consistency to mark the hours. If the timing was off, someone lost their post, or their head. Even the architecture reflects paranoia. The Forbidden City, so named because no one could enter without explicit permission, was built like a maze. Courtyards within courtyards, doors aligned to confuse evil spirits or assassins. Rumors say secret tunnels ran beneath the palace, so the emperor could escape if things went sideways. You once traced the outline of a model palace at a village festival. It took your breath away and scared you a little. It's not just the inner circle that suffers. Even mid-level bureaucrats live under a cloud. One poorly worded report, one unpopular policy, and they could be recalled, demoted, exiled. You remember the tax official who visited your village last year? Polite, well-dressed, and gone within 2 weeks. They said he angered the governor. No one knows where he went. His seal was found at the bottom of the well. Still, some dream of court life. Your neighbor's eldest studies day and night, reciting Confucian classics until his throat cracks, chasing that sliver of chance to become a government scholar. His father beams with pride. You see the fear in his mother's eyes. Because rising too far, too fast, it attracts lightning. The palace is full of rituals. When the emperor enters a room, everyone must drop to their knees. You can't look him in the eye. You can't speak unless spoken to. You can't even cough without risking offense. The robes have meanings. The colors matter. Wear yellow without permission, and you die. Yellow is sacred, reserved for the throne. You once found a scrap of yellow silk. You buried it, just to be safe. Even the emperors themselves aren't safe. Some go mad. Others become prisoners of their own ministers. One ruler spent his final years building clockwork toys and ignoring petitions. Another fled the palace entirely, disguising himself as a commoner to wander the countryside. Some say he saw how the people really lived. Some say he just got bored. You wonder which is worse. And yet, there's beauty too. Poetry composed under moonlight. Gardens with hidden groves and stone bridges arched like brushstrokes. Music that echoes down jade-tiled corridors. Scholars debating virtue with the elegance of dancers. There's a part of you that envies them, that wants to step beyond the wooden walls of your village and taste that life just for a moment. But you know better. You've seen what happens to moths who fly toward candlelight. They burn, they fall, they disappear. The palanquin passes. You bow deeply, head down, eyes on the ground. You don't know who sits inside. You don't want to. The crowd murmurs approval, and the guards clear the path ahead. Just like that, the court vanishes back into mystery. And you? You return to your field, to your bowl, to your life, where the risks are more visible, the air less perfumed. But at least you know who's watching. Because in Imperial China, the court isn't just a place, it's a storm. Beautiful, powerful, and always hungry. They catch him just before dawn, your friend Jian, the quiet boy, who once shared half a roasted yam with you during a hungry winter. The charges are vague. Theft, they say. Disrespect. Or maybe both. No one's really sure. All you know is that the constables arrived in silence, took him from his bed, and now he's kneeling in the square, hands bound behind him, surrounded by onlookers who stare and whisper, but dare not speak above a breath. The magistrate arrives an hour later, robes clean, mood unreadable. He carries a staff with a red silk tassel, a symbol of his power. He reads the charges, voice like iron, disturbing the social order, insolence, unauthorized possession of restricted property. You don't even know what that means. Jian's head remains bowed. Punishment in Imperial China is not just about justice, it's about spectacle, correction, fear, a reminder that survival comes not only from rice and shelter, but from obedience. And when that obedience breaks, the consequences are horrifying. The magistrate raises a hand. The assistants move quickly, expertly, like this isn't the first time. Jian is hauled to his feet, forced to kneel again, this time on sharp tiles, hands stretched to a whipping frame. You feel your heart race. He doesn't cry out. Not yet. The punishment today is flogging. 60 lashes with a hardwood rod. They say that's lenient. They say it could have been worse. Historians still argue whether legal codes like the Tang Code were fair for their time, or just another form of control dressed in parchment and Confucian vocabulary. On paper, the empire valued proportional justice, mercy, even rehabilitation. In practice, punishment often hinged on who you were, who you angered, and whether you had enough rice to bribe someone with a blank form. Jian doesn't scream until the 12th stroke. By the 30th, he's unconscious. The assistants don't stop. Blood stains the stone. You feel sick. You want to look away, but if you do, someone might think you sympathize. And sympathy is dangerous. Quirky fact. There's a recorded punishment called cursing duty, where a wrongdoer was sentenced to sit outside the town gates and shout curses against himself all day. It was meant to humiliate rather than maim. You almost wish Jian got that instead. He was always too soft for this world. Then there's the punishment you've only heard of in Whisper Slinky, the death of 1,000 cuts, reserved for traitors, regicides, the worst of the worst. They say the executioner makes 100 tiny incisions before the final blow, sometimes over hours. The crowd watches. The victim begs. The point isn't just death, it's demonstration. You shudder and hope you never see it. Today is brutal, but not final. Jian survives. Barely. They leave him near the temple, half conscious, body trembling. He'll heal, maybe, but he won't be the same. No one ever is. Your father once told you of a scholar who criticized an imperial edict, not with insults, just a poem, a clever one, witty even. The next day, he vanished. His house was stripped, his name scratched from the records. You asked what the poem said. Your father only shook his head. We don't remember ghosts, he said. And so you live quietly. You don't speak too freely. You don't question too loudly. You follow rules you don't understand. You carry permits for tasks you've always done. You bow lower than necessary. You laugh when you're supposed to. You forget your dreams before someone else forgets them for you. Even small crimes are risky. Stealing grain from the granary, 5 years of hard labor, striking a superior, death, owning forbidden books, beating an exile. There's a prison 2 valleys over. They say it's built underground, lined with salt bricks to dry out the body. You've never seen it. You hope you never do. The magistrate walks past you. His perfume masks the smell of blood. His assistants gather the rods, clean the stones. Jian's mother wraps her son in an old mat and carries him home. No one offers help. That would draw attention. You want to cry, but the tears stay frozen somewhere behind your ribs. That night, your village is silent. Even the dogs don't bark. At dinner, your brother asks if Jian will live. Your mother nods, lips pressed tight. Your father says only, "He will not be the last." And deep inside, you know he's right. Because in Imperial China, survival isn't just about food, or weather, or sickness. It's about submission, about knowing when to speak and when to become invisible. You wear your silence like armor. You carry your obedience like a passport. You lie awake for a long time that night, listening, thinking, remembering the way Jian used to laugh when you both found sweet taro by the riverbank, wondering if he'll laugh like that ever again. Eventually, sleep takes you, not because the world is safe, but because your body has nothing left to give. And in your dreams, you kneel too, silent, watching, surviving. The night folds over you like a faded quilt, the kind that's been patched and repatched until it carries more memory than thread. Outside, the wind hums through bamboo stalks, steady and low, like the voice of someone ancient telling stories to the moon. Your body aches, but it's the familiar kind, the kind that means you've made it through one more day. The fire is just embers now, soft orange pulses beneath a shell of grey ash. You watch it flicker and fade, like everything here quiet, slow, and endlessly cycling. The village sleeps. No shouts, no bells, no commands. Only the distant hoot of an owl, and the creak of the beams above you as they settle into the night. You think of the paddy water reflecting stars, of the old stories your grandmother whispered by lantern light, of all the ways people here try to survive with boiled herbs, with bowed heads, with dreams wrapped in straw. You breathe in deeply. The air smells of smoke and old clay. Familiar, grounding. Not everything in Imperial China is harsh. There is still the sound of rain on thatched roofs. Still the warmth of rice steamed just right. Still the comfort of a sibling's shoulder. When words are too dangerous to share, you hold on to those things. You have to. Let the heaviness melt from your limbs now. Let your thoughts loosen like knots untied. You are safe here, in this moment, in the hush of history that has paused just long enough for you to rest. So close your eyes. Let the river slow. Let the fields grow quiet. Let the world, for just a while, be still. Good night.